Welcome to Guitkits Guits. I'm the Guitkit. Today we're going to be checking out the Springsteen legendary Kent Polaris I Japanese guitar, which cost him about 70 bucks in 1964, and of course pretty much changed the course of music history. I mean, really, Springsteen isn't, you know what I mean, laughed at. He's the man. So I'm going to take a look at this particular guitar, right? And a couple guitars related to it. And let's just get underway with it right now. Welcome to Guitkits Guits. This is the first installment. Basically, the point of this series, I'm going to pretty much go through a couple guitars I have in my collection. I have over 200 guitars. You know what I mean? And that doesn't really include guitars I made. This is just guitars I've collected over the years. Nothing like crazy valuable. But today we're going to check out the Polaris I. And just to give you a little background, how I personally obtained this guitar, and you know what I mean, the guitars related to it, and a little bit of background information. Let's take a look at the history of it. So when I first got this guitar, let me show you some pictures here that I got. Guitar, this was missing. I was missing the strap button, right? And the nut had been replaced with a cheese ball nut, and I had to sort of replace it and build the correct nut for it. And it was missing this washer down here, the finish washer, and you know what I mean, the screw had been replaced with just an idiot screw, and it still had its original flat wound strings on it, which was pretty cool. So I bought it off eBay, paid about 100 bucks for it, you know what I mean? And as soon as I bought it off eBay, you know what I mean, I started looking for the parts, you know? And I found a lot of these. This is made by a company called Guyatone, which we'll get into in a little bit. A lot of these particular parts were really expensive, you know what I mean? Might as well just buy another guitar, I figured, you know. So I checked Craigslist out, and I came across this bird right here. Let me put that one down on the slab. Now this is a Polaris II, and it was like in great condition. It still had like the stickers on the back of it, you know what I mean? And it had all the parts that the Polaris I was missing. It was, however, it was missing this paddle switch, you know, the selector switch, the three-way, and you know, it was actually, this was cracked on it, you know what I mean, the base was cracked off, and these are really hard to come by. They're made out of like plastic, and I mean, pretty much all Guiatone guitars had these, you know what I mean, 1964, so, you know what I mean, it was kind of like a lame duck, you know what I mean, but I got this off of Craigslist. I had driving to South Philly. I got off this kid, you know, 100 bucks I think it was, and within the week, you know what I mean, it took for the other guitar to come in on eBay. I fell in love with this thing, man. I mean, it was a little tiny guitar, you know what I mean, the body like an inch thick, you know what I'm saying, and it just had great action even as it was, man. And I kind of felt bad, like, cannibalizing this guitar just for that guitar, man. So I went back on eBay and I got another guitar. This is like a 65, and it actually had the original paddle switch. It had these switches too. I still have them, knobs I mean. Was missing this, but I eventually found one on eBay. And it had no badge on the headstock, you know what I mean? So I just got a little Guyatone one. And I was able to, it was missing a couple of these, but I was able to sort of, you know, piece out the ones that it did have for the other two. So between all these guitars, I pretty much had like a real guitar. I actually found a finish washer in you know, the hardware store. I don't know which one it was. I can't even tell. I think it was this one or this one. It's been replaced. Looks pretty good though. You know, and I found the correct screws and everything. I actually bought one of these from Japan. So, you know, this is one of my favorite ones because it's, you know what I mean, it's like a beater, you know, it's not like, you know what I mean, so this is the one I'll play, like I'll bring it to a friend's house, or I'll jam out on it, because I don't care about breaking it, you know. So let's get back to these three guitars and take a look at them, shall we? Take a look at these guitars a little bit closer. Now, this is the Springsteen guitar, the Polaris I, and these pretty much hit the store in around April '64. That's around the period when this huge shipment of Kents came in. Now Kent, let's talk about Kent a little bit, because there's not too much information out there about Kent. Kent was the trade name of a New York City musical distributor. I think it's called like Brandelson and Jacobson or something like that. I'm not really too sure of the actual name. Something like that. They were established in the early '60s. And they initially were importing a whole bunch of acoustic guitars made by Hagstrom in Sweden. But through '63, man, pretty much guitars were dying, you know what I mean? Remember the Beatles auditioned for Decca? And the dude said to him, hey, man, guitar groups are dead, man. They're on the way out, man. You might as well go get your day jobs back. Right? I think his name was Dick Smith or some shit like that. He's the one who turned down the Beatles, right? So they didn't have too many guitars, really, you know what I mean, on hand when the Beatles hit Ed Sullivan in February of 1964, right? But right around '63, they started, you know what I mean, seeing a little bit of things picking up. So this company in New York started importing guitars. And this is one of the reasons I didn't want to cannibalize this Polaris II, because this was one of the first batches. This is in country. These came over in like late December of '63. And the earlier ones, now these are both painted in lacquer. The earlier ones, you can tell between, you know what I mean, the Springsteen batch versus the first batch by the band of sunburst. The earlier ones have a real thick sunburst. And that's the big, determining factor. You can actually see it a little bit better on the back. And I want to point out something else about the back, which is another giveaway factor for which batch it actually came from. This neck on the first one to come over, and see it from this angle. It's actually a flat neck. You see that neck is totally flat. You can see it best right here at the heel. And then we take a look at the Springsteen model from April and see it's a round neck. It's like a nice round Gibson kind of neck. You know what I mean? See how that comes up like that? And then this one is like, you know what I mean, just flat right up. So that's how you can tell, man, which batch is from. These are very rare. Plus with the sticker and everything, you know what I mean? There weren't very many of them. But any guy that wanted a little bit of puss after the Beatles came over, man, they all went out and got guitars, man. So that's why there was only like a couple thousand of these in the States. And there was like 100,000 of these. You know what I'm saying? And Guyatone made this guitar or similar guitar for this basically for, hundreds of different companies all the world over. You know what I mean? They all have this, cheesy, bridge piece and this strange looking pickup, and most of them have this, tail piece. Some of them have a little, strange little, primordial trem. But, yeah. So you'll see them in like Marathon. You'll see all kinds of different names. I forget them now. I think that Guyatone themselves actually made these badges, these gold badges. So that's cool. Now we get over into the '65 ones that came over. Now that by this time the Beatles already had conquered the world. You know what I mean? The guitar was here to stay. The '65 ones are painted actually in poly. You won't see it, the checking, you know what I mean? So, take a look at the checking, on these guitars, you know what I mean? That's lacquer check right there, man. Let's take this is a Bruce one, lacquer check. This is poly, man. Ain't no lacquer checking, you know what I mean? This is poly. So that was one difference. They're a little bit thicker too. This is probably like a quarter-inch thicker. These are like an inch thick, you know what I mean? And of course the headstock's a big Fender type headstock. One thing I want to note, though, about the Boss Man's guitar is you see it, he still has it. Sometimes you'll see it in like a museum. He'll lend it out. He's painted his knobs in red. You know what I mean? People are like, oh, I need to find one with red knobs. Well, there were no red knobs. He did it himself. I have a whole bunch of these guitars. This one actually had the original knobs. Here they are. There is no trace of any red, folks. So just, historical note, man. Bruce himself did that. All right? Get it through your head. There are no red knob Kent. It's a red herring. Now listen, I want to say one other thing, folks. One other thing about these Kents. Probably the rarest 1964 Kent is the acoustic one. The rarest one, man. And I'm not talking about the Hagstrom one. I'm talking about the 64 ones that were brought over and made. I don't think by Guyatone, but somebody else in Japan. Here it is, man. I've never even seen another one of these, ever. I've never seen one on the internet even. Looking for it. Alex Lifeson of Rush got one in 66, a Kent 6-string. But that was in 66. This is the earlier one. You know what I'm saying? It's totally like, you know what I mean, in great condition. I've never seen it. I have no idea who made it. It is a Japanese guitar. I have replaced the tuners because the tuners were totally fucked on it. But other than that, it's totally original. It still plays really good too. It has a sweet little sound to it. So that's the Kent, you know what I mean, legacy, man. The old Kent legacy. And Kent continued through the 60s, you know what I mean? But these are the early ones, you know what I mean? The early Kents. After 66, when the Beatles started playing like Epiphones, you know what I mean, the company started focusing more on guitars that were made by Guyatone and other manufacturers that looked like Gibsons, like big hollow body kind of things. Most companies started doing that, like Dan Electro did that, you know what I mean, with the Coral line. So that's what it is, man. So let's give a little bit more historical context as far as our man Bruce, and just carry on with our little tale here. Now Bruce, man, he's become sort of like a Somerset Maugham. I got this book for Christmas, I think last year, from my mom. Sorry, I was in the bathroom, Bruce, if you ever watch this video, but I did read it pretty much cover to cover, because he's a pretty good writer, you know. Just want to read. Now this is all, folks, this is for educational purposes only. I'm not trying to sell my story to hard copy here, folks. I'm just trying to let you know a little about the Kent, because let's face it, Springsteen's a legend. People want to know about him, you know. So he writes in here that he sold his pool table for 35 bucks, and his mother gave him the other 35 bucks, so $69 in total. It would be the biggest expenditure of his life, he says. And he got it at a KZO's music store on Center Street in Freehold. And then he got a little amp for it, a little Dan Electro amp. And he joined a band called the Merchants. And he got kicked out of the Merchants because, quote unquote, his guitar was too cheap. Wouldn't stay in tune. And one of his guitar members seen the same piece of junk in New York City for 30 bucks. Poor Bruce. Now he's worth like $500 million. And he still has the same guitars that he always did. But I want to address something with you, Bruce, if you ever see this video, because I love you. I think you're wonderful. I met you once or twice, you know, living so close as we do. I have some Castile stories myself. I've bumped into some people in the Castiles. I have, you know, one story about one of the fellows at Castiles that I became acquainted with. I'll save that for another guitar video that I'm going to do, because it's pretty funny. I want to talk about your guitar being out of tune, Bruce. You know what I mean? Don't blame Kent. Because my first guitar, you know, first serious, like, nice guitar that I like to play with the bands was a Gretsch Clipper, which I'm going to do a video on, which is going to tie into this video a little bit, like I was just talking about. And it had a floating bridge, too. And I was like, what, 19 or something when I got it, 18. And I didn't know anything about the floating bridge. Yeah, I figured you put it where I wonder. Why wasn't my guitar in tune? I thought it was the tuning keys. So that's why your guitar wasn't in tune, and I'll tell you why, Bruce. Now, again, this is educational reasons. You know, I ain't hard copying nothing. Here's a picture of Boss Man. You know what I mean? Look where he's got that thing. And this isn't just this picture. I mean, every picture I found of him in the Castiles with this guitar, he's got that piece right there, man. This is where it should be. You know what I'm saying? Look how far jacked up. Of course it was out of tune, Bruce. Of course it was out of tune, man. And you see this guitar when he goes like to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and lets them hold on to it for a little while. You know what I mean? You'll see that it's in the right place now. But little 14-year-old Bruce didn't know that. You know, it's okay, Bruce. It's okay, man. We were all kids once. You know what I mean? But don't blame it on the Kent. Don't blame it on the Kent. It's a gorgeous guitar. So I'm going to leave you now. I love you, Bruce. And I just want you to remember just a couple things. I actually took those strings right off that guitar, and I built this Buddy Holly guitar right around that same time, man. Nice 58. And I took the strings, original strings from that Kent Polaris I. Same one from April '64. Same stock strings that Springsteen was talking about. The same set. Other than that, the little E. That one I had to replace because it's all too short. It's all fucked up. But anyway, I used those from that guitar, man. Those same strings. So you know what I mean? Because it's kind of that era, you know. And I put some light gauge strings on this because, you know what I mean, you don't really want big strings on there. Even though those little strings were on there for 50 years. Anyway, so I'm going to give you a little sound test myself. I'm not no musician. But I don't have a Springsteen electric amp. But I got an old, you know, basic Silvertone here, which is, I guess, you know what I mean, as damn electro as you can. You know, so we're just going to, you know, give you no fancy reverb. A little bit of boss man. Hey, look, these things will stay in tune. Let me tell you something about this, people. Most of you guys will know this because you're all like gearheads. But you get restoring a guitar, tighten these screws, man. Tighten, especially in the 60s when they're all going to be slotted. Tighten them, man. Make sure that shit's tight. You know what I mean? These will stay in tune, man. I'm telling you. Intonation, right? Fix those machine heads. It's an excellent guitar. You know what I mean? If you want, shim the neck. You know what I mean? Put a little piece of cardboard in there. Get the right angle. There's no truss rod, right? Just shim the neck. So, that being said, man, I'm going to give you a little bit of taste of the fact that I don't know anything about musicianship whatsoever, but just to give you a sound test, man. Professionalism, always noted in my videos, man. Always noted for great camera work. Just like, yeah. Scorsese, man. So I had to cut my head off. Not much to be seen anyway. As long as you can see the guitar. I hope that you can see that. I don't even know any Springsteen songs, I guess. I really don't know any songs. How about this one? I was 8 years old, running with a dime in my hand. Bus stop to pick rubber paper for my old man. I'll sit on his lap, big old Buick, and I'll steer as we drove through town. Tesla my head, sits his head like a girl looking around. There it is, man. Polaris I. Main Street, wild, wild winters. Love you, Brucey.